as I start recording this video for the 12th of April 2023. And I don't know yet when this video will be published, nor when you, the average internet user of the global village, will watch this. But it will serve as an introduction on a series of 4 videos that I've recorded about home economics, and I intend to introduce my videos about home economics. There are 4 of them. They are 3 hours long on average, so there are 12 hours of ethics for household management. And here I intend to record a video to explain briefly my views on household ethics. I will comment briefly the document behind me later. But first I will promote some books to give some context. Ivan Illich was a Jewish Catholic ecologist thinker. It's about work, the problem with work. These are books about the problem of work and bullshit jobs. You can check the references on the internet. Shop Class as Soulcraft, an inquiry into the value of work. Bullshit Jobs by Mr. David Graeber. There are conferences available on YouTube. The Utopia of Rules, on technology, stupidity, and the secret joys of bureaucracy. Another book by about the bureaucracy by Ludwig von Mises, who was Jewish, like Graeber, who denounces the problem of bureaucracy. And here 2 books about the welfare state, the negative effects of the welfare state. Here it's in the case of England, I think, but it's valid for every country. And here a plan to replace the welfare state, because a lot of welfare jobs are bullshit jobs in a way. I will not detail fully, but in this video I will not explain thoroughly, but yeah. So, also, I might point, as long as I keep publishing videos, I might point to this series of videos. So there will be the introduction that I'm recording, plus the 4 parts about home economics, and I might put them in the description of all my subsequent videos once they are published, in order to provide a guiding point eventually. I don't know yet. And now I will show a brief view of economics. As I envision this. My message concerning the economy: deregulate the market and regulate your behavior. And here are books by mostly libertarian or liberal thinkers: Thomas Sowell, Charles Murray, Steven Pinker, Thomas DiLorenzo, Per Byland, Chase Rachels, Jeffrey Tucker, and Ron Paul. So my view, I will not count thoroughly, but these are the books. You can find the references. My intention is to promote in this video, as you will see once you watch the video, a libertarian ethics in terms of household management, at least the founding principles and the broad view. And my view is individualist, not in an egotistical sense, that's the negative sense, but in the most noble sense, in the American sense, because I'm an individualist, so I try to promote a libertarian, in the classical sense, view of ethics. Yeah. So, and here's my libertarian, my libertarian shirt, written in German. Actually, I'm a kind of very intelligent person in terms of IQ, in comparison with most people, and in this sense I'm individualistic. I've realized this. That's why I promote libertarian books, because I want liberty for myself, and it's difficult. To convince leftists, but to convince right-wingers as well. That's a very difficult position, and the books that I've promoted, they all share in common of being individualist in the noble sense, libertarian, American in the ideal, American libertarian, individualist, Western books, which potentially this ideal can be adopted by any person. It is universal. It doesn't mean that everyone can, from a psychological, it includes IQ, in terms of temper, character, intelligence, or culture, or personal psychology. It doesn't mean that everyone can, but potentially it can be applied to anyone without distinction of race, gender, religion, nationality, etc. It is truly universal. Yeah, so that's what I promote. Yeah. So now I will comment briefly libertarians usually they are honest about their motivations. I promote a set of ethics which potentially can be adopted. Household economics, so ethics in a sense of household management. This is not morality, although it includes morality as well, and it's not the finished, completely refined product, one might say, but these are the foundations. And yeah, I promote this for myself because I want to be free as an individual, and there are requirements. It requires effort, discipline, etc. I talk about this in my videos, in my later videos. But yeah, my motivation is I want liberty for myself, and I offer my current view, a guiding view, a map, a plan, a structure for those who might be interested as well. Yeah, so I will briefly comment. Let us talk about God. God is being, namely whatever is, if I had to formulate this very simply, whatever is not God, but is within God in a way. This is what in philosophy we call a panentheism, namely the idea that everything exists hat Dasein in German. Everything has presence within God. The whole of being, the entire universe. It's sometimes thought of to be as it's thought of as being pantheism, but actually the rigorous definition is panentheism. So God, if you will, is the whole of being, the consequence of which is that God, in a way, being is present everywhere, and the universe, the cosmos, is a totality, and the totality is present within each part. And economics help understand this, because we live in a globalized, interconnected world economically through information technology, but through the circulation of ideas as well. And the scarcity, availability, prices of goods and services is different all over the world, but is determined everywhere by the same set of rules. This is what Mr. Per Byland talks about, and Mr. Thomas Sowell as well, and Mr. Di Lorenzo does not, I mean, I haven't yet fully read, but he talks about it as well, because the laws of economics, like the laws of physics, they are the same everywhere. So yeah, for those who might not understand, because it seems weird, God is everywhere, in a way. So, yeah. And my purpose is to help order and stabilize, to offer order and stability for myself. And it begins by taking care of one's own immediate environment. And this is what the series of videos that I am providing an introduction for in this video serves. So yeah, about responsibility and order. So I produced broadly 12 hours of videos divided in 4 parts. And my purpose is to find order in order to find more stability, because we live in troubled times. I wrote, I share my ideas in these videos, and actually I have already done this in most of my videos. In all of my videos I share my ideas. And whoever you are, you don't have to like me as an individual with my flaws of my personality or my temper. You don't have to like me as an individual, but when I share good ideas, they go beyond me, and if they are good, they can be good for you independently of my own specificities, particularities as an individual. So I share my ideas. When this video and the subsequent videos and the previews that I've already posted are shared on the internet and they become public and they become a public property in the global village, you are free to draw as much inspiration as you want to improve yourself if it can help you. You don't have to like me as an individual in order to appreciate and find usefulness in my ideas when or if they are good. Because ideas are universal. Here I will illustrate with a document that I've been using a lot. They said UPS, ideas are universal. They do not exist as such, they have to particularize themselves, and each singular, let us talk about human, every human being is a singular human being with particular characteristic, ethnicity, gender, age, physical characteristic, psychological characteristic, intelligence, background, socio-economic background, personal history, that would be the singular, but social class, social status, nationality, citizenship, religion, etc., etc. And illustrated differently, every singular individual is a whole with specificities which are unique to him or to her, but he contains within himself particular and universal determinations, ideas, properties, etc., which go beyond the individual. So when I share my ideas, if they are good, they are universally good or particularly good. That's not what I meant. They are particularly good, of course, but they are good within a particular context. And mostly, when I talk, it's mostly the modern Western world. About my particularity, I have many, but one of them is the modern West. because of the inherent problems. So yeah, but the universal which is contained in my ideas, precisely because it is universal, it is valid for all. So I share my ideas, whoever you are. If you are intelligent, you can find useful aspects beyond what might separate or distinguish us on other particular or singular levels. Yeah. Also, I will talk about this, but I have already talked about this in the videos that I will publish. I have been distributing books and gathering supplies, so I encourage people to distribute books wherever they are, if they have the financial means, to distribute books, to share knowledge, and to gather supply in order to be more responsible, more autonomous, and more self-reliant. Yeah, that's what I've been doing. Also, about ideas. I fight for ideas, not for people, because my view, my philosophical view is idealist. In the rigorous definition is that reality is a product of consciousness, and a more Platonic view is that the realm of ideas in a way is more important than the realm of phenomena, if I were to simplify. So ideas is what is most noble, most elevated within each human. This is what is most spiritual in a way. And ideas are universal. There are, of course, a lot of people that I care about as individuals, but I try to put an emphasis onto ideas which can be potentially adopted by anyone, and which are universal. I try to fight for ideas against other ideas that I find wrong or either epistemologically or morally wrong, but this struggle of ideas is part of the unfolding of truth. That's a Hegelian view. But people can change their mind and adopt better ideas, potentially. They can be converted, one might say. They can change their mind and be convinced. That's my core belief in a way. They can be convinced by good ideas through rational debate. That's my liberal, in the sense of classical liberalism, or libertarian in the modern world, view, that people can adopt better ideas if they are genuinely, it doesn't mean that I agree with everything which is being said, but the ideal, reason, science, humanism and progress, yeah. So I promote ideas, and I try to fight for ideas, and I have a tendency to love people who share the same good ideas, in a way. Yeah. About free speech. The purpose in producing my series of videos about ethics is first to find order and stability for myself, but eventually to build the foundations for a free society. Yeah, there can be no liberty without order, and I will fight to exert my right to free speech. So I have decided that I will just speak. This is already what I've been doing, but I've come to a point where, since I don't know who receives what, when, what do they understand, because I've had almost no feedback. I've produced hundreds and hundreds of videos. I have had almost no feedback. So I've come to a point where, as long as I can, I will just speak. I've already recorded a few videos that I will publish at some moment, but I will keep recording video as long as I can, speak publicly or privately or both. This is what I've been doing already, but yeah, I will stop trying to anticipate who thinks what, how do they react. I will just express my idea, make them public. That's what I've been doing already. But yeah, I've come to a point where I just speak, and I will struggle to guarantee and to assert my right to free speech. And I wrote, when I'm in a stable mood, my views are those of Charles Murray and Ron Paul. These have been, others, but the kind of ideas, not these two books, but the kind of idea promoted by Ron Paul, Charles Murray, and the others, the Libertarians, Thomas Sowell and the other Libertarians, but Ron Paul and Charles Murray have been a source of inspiration for my behavior, my good behavior over the past many months. And Charles Murray has been a tremendous source of intellectual inspiration. The bell curve has had a profound influence upon me, one might say. So when I'm in a stable mood, the ideas that I would like to discuss calmly, publicly, and privately are those of Charles Murray, I would say. Ron Paul is the set of ideas and the individual who embodies the set of ideas which enable to have a free society. That's the condition. But then eventually, when I'm in a stable mood, I share a lot of views like Charles Murray. Namely, my ideal is simply a society where people could talk about controversial topics like race, IQ, etc. In a peaceful, intelligent way. Yeah. So I wrote, I'm tired of trying to anticipate what others might think or might understand about what I share. I have often tried to adapt to others, and it's partly good because this is what enables civilized, harmonious coexistence, namely to restrict some aspects of yourself, whoever you are as an individual, in order to leave room for others to be able to assert their freedom as well. It's a compromise. Everyone in society has to restrict some of his tendencies, and I have tried to do this, and I will still continue to do so because it's genuinely good. But sometimes trying to adapt to the very complexity, the extreme complexity of the modern Western world, where some topics are taboo, you are not allowed morally to say certain things, you are not allowed to say certain things legally, you don't know what exactly, you do not have to hurt anyone's feelings, which in a way it's kind of good because being a jerk or being a provocative for the sake of annoying people, it's not very smart. But I have decided, if I had to formulate, the English language is very useful. I do not consciously intend to be provocative most of the time, but I intend consciously to be thought-provoking. So, and I know that I am, just when I speak normally, I am thought-provoking because I have a different way of thinking. So I intend to provoke, not provoke people for the sake of annoying them, but to force them to shake their views and their way of thinking. And I have grown a little bit tired of trying to adapt constantly in terms of intellectual requirements. So I will just speak, and I will force others to adapt, not to everything I say, but at least to a different way of thinking. Yeah, I can be a little bit provocative sometimes. It's not always very smart, or maybe it is, but my purpose is to be thought-provoking. Yeah. Also, I wrote my utopia, if I might call this a utopia, is simply a society where people would be able to speak freely. That used to be the case in the US. It still is the case legally, and there are still a few countries which grant a relative freedom of speech to their citizens, but the US is the only one where the freedom of speech is really genuine from a legal standpoint, but morally there are a lot of taboos and moral restrictions, etc., etc. So my ideal as a society is the United States of America, but I wrote, in order to make my thoughts intelligible, I wrote this is not the only aspect that I love, but this is maybe the aspect that I love the most. Henry David Thoreau, an Emerson and the transcendentalists of the 19th century, the Amish, the bell curve by Charles Murray, and Ron Paul. It's not the only aspect that I love about America. I love many other aspects, but maybe what I love the most is really this kind of I don't know how to define it, but this kind of classical, partly Puritan, but also simple in a way. America is very complex, but yeah, Thoreau, Henry David Thoreau, the Amish, Charles Murray, and Ron Paul. But I'm intelligent enough to know that you cannot really have some aspect without having the totality, because America is also the land of big business, also freedom of opportunity, getting rich, power, prestige, money, excesses, some aspect of Protestantism, puritanical Protestantism, which sometimes are a little bit excessive, but there is everything in America, all the excesses of modernity, the excesses of the past as well, etc., etc. But yeah, what I prefer, ideally, is really to have a simple life, like the transcendentalists of the 19th century, the early settlers, or the Amish still to this day, while having an ideal of science, that would be the bell curve, that's a singular example, and while remaining true to liberty, that would be the ideal of Ron Paul, because America is the land of the free, the country of freedom, but freedom, one of the consequences economically, is an enormous amount of wealth, economic wealth being produced, but it's not the primary purpose. So in America, you ought to have, and to a certain extent you still do have, the freedom to live whatever lifestyle you see fit. And my ideal really is liberty, and the best, to reformulate this differently, the best fruits, that's a personal opinion, of liberty are the possibility of improving science and being autonomous or self-sufficient, yeah, independence, autonomy, self-sovereignty, one might say. Yeah, this is my view. Also, I wrote, as an individual, I have my own traumas, being misunderstood, being ignored, being punished. So I have my own traumas that I try to deal with, but I explain, I'm trying to be honest. The fact that less intelligent people can use the power of the state to coerce you. When you are intelligent, it's a little bit annoying. And I will use all the means at my disposal: comedy, intelligence, rationality, philosophy, my ability to speak several languages, all my skills to secure for myself and eventually for others who are interested, at least, because when you find something good, you want to share it with others. So I will use all the means at my disposal to secure my right to free speech, my own American Constitution. Actually, I want the American Constitution for the Americans, but I want it for myself as well. And that's what I've been working on. I want to secure, and I will struggle to secure my right to free speech, which is inalienable. Property, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, as they call this. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but liberty implies property and free speech. Yeah, so I wrote, because as I record this video, I have published, I think, more than 500 videos, and I receive very few respond, or very few feedback. Yeah. So I don't know who understands what. Yeah. But I wrote, if I have to build at some moment an offshore platform with libertarians in the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean or the Indian Ocean or whatever sea or ocean, in order to build a libertarian utopia, I will not hesitate. If I have to go to Mars at some moment with Elon Musk or some members of his crew to secure liberty on Mars, I will go with Elon on planet Mars. If I have to learn a new language, whatever, my liberty is, and my right to free speech is unalienable, and I will struggle and fight, not physically but intellectually. I will struggle and fight to secure liberty. This is the purpose of this series of videos that I am introducing. Yeah. About sharing knowledge. I have been tormented by guilt and shame for years. I will not retell the story, but yeah, so I try to appease my torment by sharing knowledge with others, with the global village, with potentially anyone, good references, good ideas, intelligent views, intellectual rigor, etc., etc. I'm often afraid of not doing enough or not doing the right thing. I try, and I have tried, and I still try to play fair, namely to play with the collective, to share good ideas which become de facto available potentially to anyone. I share a method of knowledge. You will, the people who watch it, you will notice this when you watch my videos about home economics or this kind of document. This is a method of knowledge. I will not comment this as of now, but I share for free the result of months, years of intellectual labor for free. I made them available. This document and the documents that I share, they are made available. They can be used, modified, improved by potentially any person interested. Yeah. Also, so I share knowledge. I have been working almost every hour of every day for almost 14 months now. Over the past 14 months, I simplify, I have taken maybe a few days off, not to go on vacation, but simply to de-wire my brain in a way to rest when I was really exhausted. But otherwise, I work every waking hour almost of every day, which means participating in practicing my teachings, my principles, my guiding principles in terms of home economics. So I do not just think and record video, etc. I try to adopt a full lifestyle which consists in participating in the life of the surrounding community and trying to become independent in terms of my ability to manage the daily tasks, daily routines. So that's part of my work. And about home economics, I try to practice what I preach, and I share what I've been practicing. Of course, I cannot constantly and perfectly consistently practice all the good ideas that I share, because it's really exhausting and it's simply psychologically, physiologically impossible to constantly do the correct thing. So I have moments where I'm really exhausted, or but I have all the pieces of advice that I have shared and that I will keep sharing in my videos about home economics. I have been practicing them with very strong consistency for many months, sometimes many years. So yeah, I haven't practiced everything, but yeah, I try to lead by example whenever I can. An example is I pick up the trash. I've been picking up the trash almost every day, not every day, but 95% of the days for the past 6 months, and I continue to do so. Every day I go out and for 10, 20, sometimes 30 minutes I pick up the trash. It's part of becoming useful and struggling against Western decadence. Also, I wrote about my content. I produce garbage in a way in terms of formal presentation, or because it's not very pleasing aesthetically, etc., etc. But the reason is that I am under constant pressure because I'm kind of intelligent, although I can be sometimes a little bit clumsy, but I am very intelligent nonetheless, and I see what happens in the global village, and I have a global view. When I look at the news, I know that everything is interconnected, so events which do not affect me directly, they nonetheless affect everything else because everything is interconnected. So the wars, the tension, the banking crisis, the political tension, my personal problems, the long-term unsustainability of the social system in all Western countries eventually, I'm aware of this. And I've been working under more or less constant pressure since February 2022. That's why I cannot do everything right in terms of formal presentation, editing, aesthetically pleasing, the enlightening for everyone, or by lowering down and making thoughts accessible. I try to improve constantly to be less rigorous, less demanding intellectually, more intelligible. But I have to struggle on all fronts, like the Germans always do. And I have really invested a lot of time and effort in producing at least the formal structure of home economics to help myself, but eventually to help potentially anyone find stability and order in very troubled and complex times, because there is a tremendous flow of information. It brings about a lot of confusion, and documents like these, they also help me clarify my thoughts. So yeah, that's the reason why I produce garbage, because it's not aesthetically pleasing, it's not very rigorous, etc. I could take many months or a couple of years off and write a good book about philosophy where I would clearly formulate all my ideas, etc. I could do this. I could spend a few months studying how to edit videos and make a great content about any topic potentially, but I don't, because I do not have the luxury of the moral luxury of feeling completely disconnected from the rest of the world, and I see the problems all over the world. So I have been, and I still am, in a state of constant pressure. Yeah, so I provide the view of the totality. Yeah, and I struggle to reject nihilism, because when there are problems everywhere, more or less, it's tempting sometimes to say, oh, it's too complex, I don't care. But I've been struggling, and I still do, not precisely to adopt this view and to try to not to reject the system, as some people might be tempted to do, and I don't blame them, but I try to change the system from within. And this is really one of the reasons why I provide this series of lectures about home economics, because there is no way out of the system, in a way, because everything is interconnected, so it has to be changed from within, and it begins by oneself modifying one's own behavior. So that's what I've been doing, that's what I will continue to do, and I have tried and I still try to provide a simplified view of daily life management, in a way. That's another expression for home economics, which might potentially help everyone or most people who need help in this department to live a more organized, more structured life, and to find stability wherever they are and whoever they are and whenever they need this, but it requires first to understand I've made this intelligible, but it's I play fair, namely I share my ideas, but ideas have to be implemented. So I have been implementing my ideas, and I will still continue to do so. But then, once I have shared the knowledge, it's up to you, or other than myself, if you find usefulness in my ideas, to work on yourself, to implement them as well, to the greatest extent possible, if you find them good or adequate. But I cannot do the work. I can show you the full structure. This is not the document on home economics, but I can show the full structure to help envision the totality, but then I can try to provide good, if they are good rules of conduct and share good links, etc., etc., good authors, good ideas. But then they have to be implemented in a realm of ethics, which is namely to practice, to actualize. And I can do my part, but I cannot do your part. You who are outside of myself in a way. So yeah. So about responsibility. Yeah. There is kind of a conflict, a philosophical conflict between acting according to principles or acting with consequences in mind. That's the Kantian view versus the utilitarian view. I try to be responsible. I try to act according to principles, but without disregarding the consequences, so I try to find a proper balance. So, for instance, there are a lot of people in the Western world who, because of lack of access to knowledge due to a different generation or a different social class or a different level of intelligence, they are really they have been dumbed down, and it might be tempting to reject the people who have an average level of consciousness and saying, oh, they don't understand anything, or we don't care, but precisely that's what I call nihilism. I try to offer a view which might be potentially shared for everyone, and I try to help as many people as possible, because it's in my interest that the greatest amount of people be responsible. And someone like Ron Paul, he has been struggling for years and decades to share his ideas, which are good, but it can be sometimes a little bit depressing because he shares constantly good ideas and very few people are interested. So it requires a resilience, in a way, and strength of character to keep defending ideas even though people are not receptive to these ideas. And I've been working, I will still try to work to make my ideas more accessible. Yeah, but eventually I try to be responsible by encouraging everyone eventually to be more responsible on a singular level. And I have sometimes mood shifts, sometimes I'm unstable for various reasons, and that's why I share views which might appeal to a lot of people. I try, because that's part of my conflict. I have some radical views in terms of this book, for instance. A truly libertarian society, that's an ideal, but I'm intelligent enough, precisely that's responsibility, I'm intelligent enough to know that really a radical libertarian society, it appeals predominantly to a certain set of people, highly intelligent, predominantly Western in terms of anthropology, namely white Westerners, but also culture. It can apply to people of all origins, or all ethnicities, but predominantly to people with Western values, individualism, liberty, independence, etc., etc. It's open to anyone, people of all origins potentially, but I'm intelligent enough to know that it appeals predominantly to Western, which means here white people. Here it means white. It appeals predominantly to white people. So I'm aware that for most people, and including most whites in the West, an idea like this, namely to have really a radical libertarian society, it requires a tremendous change of mindset, and a lot of people, they are not, it's not that they are not willing, but maybe they are unable to have a dramatic change of views. So I try to adapt. That's why I promote authors which are more, one might say, not less radical, but who are more appealing, although it's radical as well, but they are more appealing to a broader range of people. So that's part of my struggle. I try to be responsible, but there are some principles that I don't want and I cannot compromise on, namely liberty for Westerners, one might say, but then it has to be adapted to each particular context. My universal ideal is liberty, but it has to particularize itself depending on anthropological determination, cultural determination of intelligence as well, nationality, which is partly tied with culture, etc. So I try to, yeah. So I wrote, who do I trust as groups? Usually I don't trust groups, but as groups, I trust anti-establishment conservatives of the Western world, namely the conservative who have been consistently anti-establishment for the past many decades or years at least. I trust them because precisely these are responsible people. Someone like Jordan Peterson, it doesn't mean that I agree with everything, but I can recommend Jordan Peterson because he's kind of a voice of sanity and reason against the excesses of the left and what they call the system, but also against potential excesses from the right as a reaction against the excesses of the left. Yeah, so I trust anti-establishment conservatives, not the conservative who suddenly, after having contributed to the system and benefited from the system for years or decades, suddenly, if there are changes, they might say, oh, but I've always been on the side of liberty. Well, we'll talk about this later. It's not that I do not trust them, but spontaneously I tend to trust conservative, because here that's really the particular context of the modern West. I tend to trust conservative, even if they are within the establishment, within the political parties, etc. I tend to trust them more than leftist, because in the current context of dissolution of Western civilization, conservatives, they are a little less decadent morally, intellectually, etc. But the conservative, one might say, namely the establishment conservatives in all Western countries, I trust them slightly. It's not that I trust them more, I distrust them less than most leftists. But yeah, and also I trust the libertarians, usually the right-wing libertarians. I'm talking about groups, people that I don't know individually, if they are conservative, anti-establishment conservative or libertarians. Spontaneously I tend to trust them because they represent balance and sanity in a Western civilization gone a little bit insane. And I trust also responsible ecologists, even if their personal motivation are leftist. I have no problem if they practice ecology, not political ecologists, but ecologists who work for their independence. Usually they have an idealist, in the sense of a political idealism, left-wing views, but actually they are common sense people because they work on the practical aspect. So I also tend to trust ecologists if they are genuine, not political ecologists. Yeah. So anti-establishment conservative, anti-establishment ecologists, and libertarians as well. Spontaneously, these are the kind of people that I recommend. Yeah. And here names that I have promoted and I will keep promoting: Ron Paul, Charles Murray, Thomas Sowell. They represent some sort of a moral compass in the realm of politics for me. Also, I wrote, I have conflicts within me, but I have shared, and I will continue to share, a sufficient amount of inspiring links, whether people, books, websites, references, for others to find inspiration in case I become a little bit excessive to balance myself. Yeah. I reject the nihilistic right, although I might agree with some or a lot of their analysis. I reject the nihilism, which is not because they are ill-intended, it's simply because sometimes the context is very difficult, so people have the tendency to say, I don't really care. I reject this, I try to struggle against this. That's why precisely I promote reasonable, responsible people. Yeah. Also I wrote, my ideal is simply a society where people would spend time reading books. That's my kind of individualist self. I'm not saying that I can implement this, but that's my ideal. A society where people would slow down the lifestyle and would spend a considerable amount of time reading books, because this is what I enjoy doing. And yeah, if they don't want to, I cannot force them, and I don't want to force them, but at least to make this appealing, I will not list all the bullshit jobs, but there are a lot of people in modern Western societies who really have bullshit jobs. If they find interest in quitting their job and doing, it requires a lowering of the standards of living, but if they can find enjoyment and intellectual and spiritual growth by reading books, I will encourage people who have the economic opportunity to do so, to read books, to go outside, to talk with people, to live some sort of a contemplative life. It's not devoid of action. Here I'm talking about people who can... that's kind of my view. That's what I said earlier. Practical craftsmanship, manual labor, autonomy, reading books, really a simple life. But I will not here develop my full view, but my idea really is a libertarian society, classical America, without the excesses of wealth. I don't blame people. I don't want to regulate. That's the deregulate the market. I don't want to regulate. I'm not opposed to wealth on political grounds, that it shouldn't be prohibited. But I simply find that a lot of it will be made evident throughout the series of lectures. There is really an over-excess of production in modern Western society, an excess of economic wealth, not widely distributed, but a creation of wealth, which is actually kind of worthless for various reasons. I don't want to regulate the market, but precisely regulate behavior. I practice and I preach, in a way, minimalism for the people who can afford to willingly practice some sort of an ascetic lifestyle. Yeah. Also, I wrote still about responsibility. Once I publish the series of videos about home economics and all the other videos that I will keep publishing, I will keep living a normal life, which means I have to sleep at least 7, sometimes 8 hours in a 24 hours life cycle, the day cycle, at least 7 to 8 hours dedicated to sleep or rest, and a significant portion of my day I will keep, as long as I can, for my own psychological and physiological balance, live a normal life, which means doing most of the stuff that I talk about in the videos about home economics. It's not having leisure it means for me going outside, participating in local communities or civic life, ordering my immediate environment, gathering knowledge, studying, in order to make better videos, etc., etc. So as long as I can, I will keep granting myself at least a third or a fourth of my days to maintain balance. Yeah, this is precisely the purpose, to find balance, and the rest of the day, that's, here, I can say this as I record this, once I have ordered a few a few aspects of my immediate environment, one might say, what I intend to do, maybe, here I don't know, but maybe I will take a few days of rest intellectually, and then I intend to keep producing. I don't know, I'm not saying that I will do this, and I don't know for how long, but I intend to produce at least 2 hours of content each day that I will not publish immediately, but I have finally order, more or less, in a kind of chaotic lifestyle, and now I'm in a position, at least for the coming, as I record this, the coming days or weeks, I don't know, but to produce good content on a daily basis, and that's what I intend to do. So to find the balance between physiological rest, which means sleep and healthy diet, a singular life while participating in the life of the community with daily routine to share my ideas on a singular level, distributing books, participating in ecological purposes, etc. I intend to continue to do so as long as I can, reasonably, peacefully, calmly do so, and finally dedicate myself to the universal by sharing, recording ideas, etc. This is the life that I've been leading, and that I will continue to lead as long as I can. Yeah, but I need a balance. Also, I wrote about socialism. I struggle for my liberty, which requires order and discipline, and I have a problem with socialism. This is connected with what I said earlier. Socialism is an idea. People can be converted. They can change their mindset. I mean, some people, maybe they can't for inherent reason, but potentially there is no contradiction in the possibility of evolving from a collectivist, socialist, statist perspective to a more libertarian view. It's not logically contradictory. So potentially anyone can be. I'm not a religious reformer advocating capitalism, although I am, but this is not my primary intent. And simply, I seek to guarantee and assert freedom at all levels, and it requires, in the economic field, a minimum of autonomy, financial, economic independence and autonomy at all levels for individual groups, nations, geographical areas, etc., etc. And yeah, so my problem with socialism is that I have had, and I still have to, unlearn everything that I've been taught intellectually in school, the media, most intellectuals, the politicians. I don't listen to the politicians, or very rarely, but I have to unlearn everything that I have been taught. I have to relearn everything, to reconstruct metaphysics, epistemology, all the sciences which have been falsified on fake moral grounds, etc. So I have to unlearn everything, to relearn everything. I have then to share my knowledge out of a sense of moral duty. I have to share what I have been learning. And then I have to apply, in order to be consistent, I have to apply as consistently as possible the teaching that I've discovered while working on household management. And I have been totally dependent, immature, incompetent. That's why I have a problem with socialism, because it turns people in dependent, immature, incompetent individuals, or not individuals, but dependent servants of the state, one might say. Plus, I have my problem of autism. Plus, I've realized that people, they all have different level of consciousness, so I have to deal with all these problems to become competent again. This is what I associate with the American ideal. here that's a good joke for the modern Americans. When I think about America, I think about maybe the first, well, when I think kind of rigorously, the first thing which comes to mind is for me competence. What is an American? An American is a competent person, because I think about the building of this nation, the rise of this nation, but maybe in the modern day, I mean, the Americans, they are still very competent in most fields, of course, but when the Americans, when they hear that, what I've been thinking about the average American is that it's first and foremost a competent person, maybe they will find this comic, and some will say, of course we're competent, we're Americans. Some of them, either looking at themselves or looking at their neighbors, not their direct neighbors, but their surrounding environment, they say, I'm not sure that the modern the modern state of this country. No, but seriously, why the reason why I will talk about this in other videos, but I can say this. For me, America, classical America, which peaked in terms of competence, maybe at the end of the 19th century, early 20th century, when really the ideal of individualism was best exemplified. But still, in the 1950s, America was at its peak. That's Make America Great Again. But I'm not really a nostalgic of the 1950s, necessarily. Of course, it was great compared to today's standards on many aspects, but there were problems as well. We know the list of the problems, discrimination, racism, etc., etc. But anyway, you cannot come back in time, because the return is always mediated by the process which has brought the separation from the point that you are trying to reach. So that's very Hegelian. So there's no going back. You've changed things, dear leftist. Yeah. But yeah, the ideal of America is a country of competent people, and of course I'm very attracted by this ideal, because as a singular individual, and that's the case of a lot of people in the West, I speak just as a self, but it's the case of many people, I have been, and I still am partly dependent, immature, incompetent, etc., and I have to relearn everything, which is, here I have to praise. That's a Nietzschean view, but that's the Hegelian view as well. I have to praise my opponent, because the good thing about socialism is that it turns you into a completely worthless individual, but the good thing precisely is that if you are worthless, you have the opportunity of growing in skills, competence, autonomy, independence, and that's gratifying. There are also good aspects, you have to be honest. There are good aspects about socialism, and I understand why, because I've read this book here, that's my responsible, balanced self. I have read this book, and I understand why people, they are attracted by the need for an entity, in here the entity is the state, to take care of them, because really in a capitalist, purely libertarian society, the process of change and innovation goes so fast that it's psychologically unbearable for most people, in spite of the wealth, the opportunity, the comfort provided. It's unbearable from a psychological standpoint, because things change too fast. So here, that's my balance step. I understand why a lot of people, they are attracted by socialism, in a sense that for them this is what enables them to find stability and security, material security, in a constantly changing world. And they turn towards the state. So I understand the psychological motive, and I don't blame people for this, because I have this need as well, but my way of finding stability and order and to slow down the speed at which the modern world and the circulation of information shakes our psyche is precisely working on home economics, on an individual way while sharing collectively. So I understand the psychological reason why people are attracted to socialism, but what most people don't see, because they get deceived, is that it doesn't work. It produces bad consequences, even if there are some principles might be might be appealing. And if, here, I make an intelligent remark, if the ideal, if by socialism is meant the ideal of independent workers organizing themselves without using state coercion to force robbery on the other taxpayers, but if it's an ideal of the self-organization of workers, I agree, of course. But the problem is, that's not how it works. So, yeah. Because independence and autonomy, independence and autonomy is what I've been searching for and what I still strive for. So, yeah. Okay. Also, here I make a remark about my YouTube statistics. As I'm recording this video, I've spent 14 months talking on YouTube, overwhelmingly in English, and my latest video, as I record this, had broadly 70 views. So after more than 500 videos published, hundreds and hundreds of hours of content, 14 months almost of constant dedication to producing content, 70 views broadly and 4 likes. I don't care about the number of views or likes as such, but it just illustrates that I have completely failed to communicate. And I've looked at the statistics. Most people, they look at the beginning of a video and they quit very easily. That's why here also, once this video is recorded, I still have in mind the intent to produce a few structured videos that I've been working on and I will keep working on. But once this video is recorded and published, I don't know when it will be published, but once it is done, I will make shorter videos. So I will try not to go longer than 2 hours, precisely because I will have shared a way to bring stability and order. So the 12 hours of content about home economics, once they are published, and even before, but once they are published, I will make shorter videos and I will guide or direct people towards these 4 videos about home economics, which have helped me and might help them as well bring stability. So I will make shorter videos to communicate more easily. Yeah. And about my documents, here's the view of the totality. It's kind of really exhausting physically and intellectually to share my documents that I've already shared and I will share again in the 4 videos about household economics. It's really exhausting to repeat the same thing every time, so I will still use these documents in this form or another to illustrate my ideas if I need to, but at some point I will stop and I will imagine that if people are interested, they will use my documents and they can reshape or restructure. That's just a formal presentation, but I will stop spending a lot of time physical and it's physically and intellectually exhausting to share this in every video, almost every structured video. So yeah. Also I wrote about Eurocentrism. I am Eurocentric, one might say, and about UPS, at this moment I cannot envision the world differently than through the lens, here I would say Western, which strictly speaking Western is an ideology, so it's not tied to any ethnic group if it is defined as an ideology, but historically it has been and still to this day it's overwhelmingly European, namely it means white, not Europeans of Europe but anthropological European. Western civilization empirically has been and still is the product of overwhelmingly white people. There have been non-white contributions, important one, Jewish, Afro-Americans, inspiration from the Muslim world at some moment, and contributions from people of all ethnic background over the past several decades. It cannot be denied. But historically, Western has meant for a long time white, either for those who praise the West or for those who don't. So I cannot think about the world without the mediation as a singular individual. Scientific truth, they are universal. The laws of economics, the laws of physics, etc., etc. But that's why I wrote I am Eurocentric, and I cannot not be, because most of my categories, I'm not talking about logical categories, but my historical cultural references, they are Western, and I cannot reach the universal without the mediation of Western, what I might say. And here I have partly a French culture, but actually most of my references, cultural, scientific, intellectual, they are either English or American or German. So it's kind of confusing for everyone eventually, but that's why here I use the word Western. They're actually European. Most of my references, they are European. But they are Western in the sense that I am aware of the influence, the intellectual influence of precisely the non-white people who have contributed to the history of the West for the good. But overwhelmingly, my views are Eurocentric, because the overwhelming majority of people that have shaped my worldview are Europeans, which means white. Yeah. So yeah. Also, about UPS and about my view about precisely America, Europe, and Germany. I have already talked about this, and I will briefly, very briefly explain. America, the United States of America, is a singular country, but it's also a universal country, because there is everything in the US. Really, there is everything in the United States of America. So in everything, of course, there are things that whoever you are, you prefer, but at least you have the choice of everything. You can pick up anything you prefer, and what I prefer, I've already listed this. This is what I call classical America, exemplified by Ron Paul and all the other authors that I have promoted, who embody the classical American ideal of liberty, which precisely make everything possible. And here, there are a lot of aspects, most aspects of course that I love about America, either as in the chronological perspective, the historical development of this nation, or the modern 21st century United States of America, but also there are a lot of aspects. Well, they exist because they participate in the totality, but I am not spontaneously these are not aspects that I spontaneously love, but they are part of the totality. So America, here I have the certainty, is a perfect country, but perfect here means that there is everything, in a way. Yeah, and I know from empirical experience that actually all Western countries, their intellectual life depends on particular specificities of geography, religion, historically Catholic or historically Protestant countries, whether they are situated in Northwest Europe or overseas, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, etc., whether they are specialized in industry or trade or the services, whether their language is Germanic or Latin, etc., or Slavic. I mean, yeah, it works as well, but there are various particularities, but I know that most, if not all, Western countries, their intellectual and spiritual life is modeled unconsciously according to the intellectual life of the US. I know this is the case of France, of England, of Germany, and I know by deduction that it's also the case of Belgium, the Scandinavian countries. For the Southern European countries and Eastern European countries, it's slightly different because they haven't had the same, they haven't gone through the same cultural, demographic, economic process over the past few decades, but Northwestern countries, which includes Northwestern Europe plus Canada, Australia, New Zealand, etc., and the US, of course, their life is modeled according to the patterns which structure the intellectual life of the US. And one of the reasons is simply because through the internet and the sharing of knowledge, ideas, when they are good, they are universal. They have to be particularized in each context. But America is the greatest producer of wealth, not in terms of GDP and economic wealth, although it is probably as well, but in terms of intellectual wealth. Yeah. So anyone can borrow the ideas produced by America when they are good, and most of the time they are good, but they are good because they have to struggle, the Americans intellectually, because of free speech. All the ideas can express themselves, and they have to struggle against bad ideas. That's what makes the good ideas good, because they have to refine and develop themselves in the struggle against other ideas. So books like these, they are really excellent, and when they are true, and overwhelmingly they are true in the sense that the theoretical aspect that they present enables to understand universal economic processes, they apply to everyone. Yeah. I know this is the case in France, like I said, England, Germany, and I cannot have the perspective of other countries because of the limitation of language, but probably, not probably, it's certain actually, but to what extent it depends on, here I imagine that I talk to a person of another country than the Anglo-Saxon or Northwestern European countries. Let us imagine a Southern American country or an Asian country or an African country or an Eastern European country. Of course, the story, the individual case of the country is very different from that of other Western countries, but the scientific patterns, whether in biology, physics, economy, or all the other sciences, which structure the life of this country, they are the same everywhere. The particular context is different, but science is universal. It's valid for all. The laws of physics, they apply everywhere in the global village. The laws of biology as well, the laws of economics, the laws of sociology, they are not necessarily understood, and depending on the countries, they are less or more or less understood, but they are valid everywhere. Yeah. That's what I'd say. Also, so that was about America briefly. About Europe, what I love, I've already said it, what I love the most is Europe, but Europe, it's not a continent. For me, it's an anthropological determination. It means European people, white people who live partly in Europe, but also overseas, predominantly in the US, Canada, etc., etc. But when I speak about Europe as what I love the most, of course, it's the most noble aspect of Europe: the art, the poetry, the morality, the philosophy, the aesthetics, etc., etc. And it has been historically most of the time developed in the continent of Europe, but as an idea, it can and actually does exist outside of Europe. And actually, a lot of the best aspect of Europe in terms of that would be the romantic aspect a lot of this can be and actually is present outside of continental Europe, in the US or in the former colonies. Yeah. And then there's Germany. Germany, in a way, of course, I love Germany, but Germany, it is a singular country, but actually it's also a metaphysical view in a way, because what is most genuine in a way, or what is most characteristic in the highest sense of Germany is its metaphysics, which also, like the US, is a universal country economically, culturally, in terms of power, etc. It's universal, it impacts everyone, but actually Germany, through its system of ideas developed by the greatest philosophers, Leibniz, Kant, Fichte, Schelling, Hegel, Nietzsche, Heidegger, and all the others, it's universal as well. So that's my view. So in this sense, Germany is not just the singular country Germany, although it is as well, but it's the German or the Germanic tradition, which is metaphysical. So yeah, it's kind of complex, but for me it's clear. America, Europe, and Germany, this is what structures my worldview, and it seems very limiting or very limited, but actually because Germany is universal from a metaphysical standpoint, and because America is universal from an economic, political, cultural standpoint, I can reach the universal, I can talk potentially to everyone, because the references of America, the modern US, and the eternal metaphysical Germany, they are universal. Yeah, I will not develop much about this in this video, but yeah. Now, about growing up. My life has consisted and still consists in trying to grow up, to become more mature, more adult, and this is why the classical American ideal, an ideal of a society of free, responsible individuals, is my ideal, and in today's world it is most exemplified by Ron Paul and the ideals and the ideas that he promotes and have been promoting. Yeah, I want to mature, to grow up, to improve, to become more autonomous and sovereign and responsible and to become a grown-up, actually, because here my particular case is the modern West. The younger generations, at least since the 70s or 80s, have become immature in a way. Not all of them individually, but collectively the West has become immature, and it has become a civilization of children, and that's the poison, when I say, but the cure, that's the classical tradition of liberty, individualism, etc., etc. And here I speak as well. One of my problems is that I have to be, no, it's not that I have to be, it's that partly I am a fatherless child on a singular level, but also on a cultural level, because the problem of the West, very simplified, the modern West, is the death of the father figure. This is a civilization with no father figure, because the last time that a Westerner, here it means a white person, tried to adopt to embody the father archetype, he was an Austrian of Germany, or actually a German of Austria, and well, he brought about a few problems, one might say. So the symbolic figure of the father has been suppressed in the West, which has brought about generations of irresponsible children. And the trap to avoid is, when you are fatherless and you are in search of a father figure, of course the trap to avoid, I know this because yeah, in modernity, is to try to seek the last historical father with its excesses. But the quest of most young Westerners who have grown in broken household or in stable household but in a broken civilization from a moral standpoint is to become mature, to become men, independent adults again. So I am the fatherless child. I'm a fatherless child in terms of education and instruction and nurturing for my personal reason, but also growing up in a fatherless civilization, a civilization which has become fatherless. But I want to improve and to grow up, but I have to be the brother, in a way, for others who are sometimes more helpless or as helpless as I am, but I have to share, morally I have to share with them what can help them grow. Here I talk mostly to Westerners of my generations who have been, whether they have been raised by an empirical father or not, most of us have grown up in a fatherless context, which is very difficult because it lacks a guidance, a moral compass. This is why figures like Stephen Molyneux, Jordan Peterson, Ron Paul, they can serve as for a lot of young people, Western, predominantly white, but non-white as well, they can serve as a moral compass, as a father figure. Yeah. So I have to be the brother who has to take care of the brothers, the other brothers in a way, and the other member of the family, without himself having had a father who has raised him. So I have to, I am the child, the brother, I have to become the husband, because I have to put order in my household and restore restore order among Western women who have become a little bit wild, yeah. And eventually I have to become the father as well. So I have to become responsible for myself and to be responsible for others. But the problem is that others, they impose upon me and upon all of us as Westerners a system which turns people into immature, irresponsible individuals. A lot of people, they don't want to be instructed or to be educated in the sense of they don't want to be taught how to live their life. But the problem is that through the means of politics, they use their democratic power to impose upon the rest of society policies which turn people into immature, irresponsible individuals. That's my political problem in a way. I am prevented from. No, I'm not prevented from growing up individually, but I can grow up individually, but eventually there are restrictions imposed upon people who want to grow up by people who promote unconsciously political systems which bring about massive irresponsibility and immaturity and yeah. Also, about growing up, I wrote, I don't know at this moment, I don't know how I function as an individual. I see broad patterns, but I don't understand completely, nor how the world functions. I try to read as much as I can, in as many topics as I can, to try to understand the rules, the laws which govern the evolution of the phenomena, but it goes so fast. And I will still try to improve, but I will say trying to understand everything before acting is kind of wrong. I've learned this empirically, namely sitting in my office, I might have had, and still do in a way, the temptation just to sit in my office and to read books about the laws of economics, the laws of physics, etc. But while the consequences of these laws are made manifest in the phenomena everywhere in a way, so I willingly give up on the attempt to understand everything before acting. I act, I already have, by sharing knowledge, and I will continue to do so. But I must confess that I am not competent here. I'm not talking about, I'm talking about epistemological scientific competence. So I willingly share a kind of knowledge which is incomplete, because trying to understand everything without acting, trying to reach perfection without sharing in a way, that's wrong. So I accept it's partly connected with the idea of that I mentioned earlier, that I tend to share sometimes a little bit of garbage in terms of formal presentation or lack of maybe rigor or seriousness, because precisely if I have this tendency, and I'm struggling against this tendency to try to reach perfection, it's morally wrong. I discovered this empirically. It's not morally wrong, but it's not morally wrong, but it has negative consequences. Perfectionists, they want to do good. They are motivated by the intention of trying to do good, but it's often negative, because if you try to produce something perfect because you're afraid of failing, it might create it might be excessive. So I willingly share documents which are not rigorously completed, or maybe not rigorously structured completely, etc. So I willingly share my views which are incomplete because I'm in a process, but I wrote, and this is still okay, I'm nonetheless interested in knowledge, and I will keep sharing knowledge, but also I will keep gathering knowledge, but not in an excessive way. But I will grant myself every day, as long as I can, a few hours dedicated to studying eventually all topics, not only these topics but all scientific topics, because every time that I gather knowledge, my thoughts are clearer, I can express my views more clearly, and when I share, it's more accessible and more intelligent in a way. So I will keep, as long as I can, gathering knowledge, but while accepting a lack of perfection, in a sense of lack of completeness. So also about status, I have no status, as I know, so people ignore me when I talk, either publicly or privately. But I do not want, which can be frustrating when you know that you say intelligent things and that others, they don't care because you have no status. And if they start to care at some moment, if they care because you have a status and not because what you say is intelligent, that's problematic as well. So being ignored while saying intelligent things can be frustrating, but being listened to while saying dumb things might be problematic as well. So the ideal would be to be listened to when or if the person says intelligent things, and to be ignored or to be if the person says dumb thing, but it requires judgment, and most people don't do this. So at some moment my views or me as a person, I will become famous in a way, but in a way I complain a lot. I have a tendency to complain a lot, but if in a way, how should I explain this? I don't want to be blindly listened to or blindly followed by people if what I say is not worthy of interest. So in a sense, even if I might experience a little bit of frustration, so if at some moment people disagree or ignore my views because they are not genuinely inspired, it might hurt my pride if I have an excess of pride, but actually that's a good thing. That's part of what growing up is, mainly the ability to tolerate negativity in a sense of disagreement if they are genuine, and this is part of what enables growth. So I am willing to be contradicted, and I encourage people, whenever they watch this or whenever they hear about me, to contradict me in an intelligent way if I deserve to be criticized intelligently. And I don't want people, because at some moment people will appreciate at least some aspects of me, but if you want to appreciate what I produce, do it because it's good, and if it is good, otherwise I grant you the right to question my judgment if it is questionable, when it is questionable. But when I say intelligent things, responsible, mature, intelligent, structured, and good things, eventually it's not that I want to be praised, but I want the good that I bring to be acknowledged. Yeah. Because it's good, not because I do this when I do, but if it's good, it has to be acknowledged. Yeah. And I wrote, I don't want, so I have no status, but I don't want to acquire a status in an ordinary way, namely, I could start a channel or a website or write a book or become an influencer in a classical way about any topic, because if I dedicated myself to sharing knowledge or views, producing content about any topic, I could make it interesting, but this is not my intention because it would require too much manipulation, scheming, deceiving, etc. That's what I say earlier in the video. I will just speak and share my views. When I am balanced and calm, my view are, it doesn't mean that I agree with everything, but the ideal is the ideal of Charles Murray. That's an example. It's not the only individual, but he embodies an ideal. Namely, to be willing and to be able to discuss controversial topic in an intelligent, reasonable way. But in the modern day, in the West, it's very difficult. But that's my ideal nonetheless. I'm not saying that I'm always balanced. I can have excesses. That's why I promote a responsible people, etc., etc. But that's my ideal. But I don't want to pretend. How should I explain this? There are already people who are scientifically... No, how should I explain this? There are already a lot of people who are politically incorrect in the modern context of the West, which is good because the modern West is a little bit... there are problems, what might I say. So being politically incorrect, not for the sake of being politically incorrect, but usually if it's for the sake of saying intelligent things. If you say intelligent things, you bring controversy in the modern West, because there's some sort of a war against intelligence and for the triumph of stupidity, in a way. That could be one way of defining the modern establishment. So my idea would be to be politically incorrect, because the circumstances require that some truth be spoken without trying to appease and to please everyone, because it has reached a point of excess in the modern West, but while remaining civilly correct, what I say, namely to discuss controversial topics in a civil manner. The ideal is Charles Murray, the bell curve and his recent books. That's the ideal. And I will pursue this ideal, namely I will promote ideas which are controversial, but not because the problem is not with the ideas, the problem is with the collective structure which rejects intelligence when it is genuine and authentic. Yeah. So, yeah, I do not want to acquire a status in an ordinary way because of the global context. So I will just share my ideas. That's what I've been doing, but I will keep doing so. Once this series of video is published, the 4 videos, the introduction that I'm recording plus the 4 videos, I will probably put the link in most of my videos to these 4 videos to help people find structure, balance and guidance and stability. I will try to keep applying the teachings that I have kind of discovered to stabilize myself. But then I will speak more freely without trying to anticipate who understands what, when, who gets the message, when, etc. I will just go my own way. Yeah. And also, I wrote, I am partly frustrated against Western politicians, journalists and scholars, not all of them, but a lot of them, because these are people precisely who speak a lot of nonsense, and they have a status, and they are kind of blindly listened to or blindly followed by millions of people, in spite of them saying stupid things or scientifically incorrect or in spite of their lack of culture. So that's kind of problematic. But precisely, I've come to a point where I'm sick of this situation being problematic for myself. Ideally, the problems will be solved, but if it has to be problematic, it will be problematic for others, not for me, because I'm tired of trying to adapt constantly to everyone. I will speak my views. I welcome criticism if it's intelligent, if it can help me to improve, because this is the driving force behind any sort of improvement and development. It's the ability to be self-critical. Yeah, I will try to balance myself, but I have conflicting tendencies, I have impulses, etc., etc. I try to be reasonable with this series of videos. Yeah. And here I wrote a list of individuals with a status that I trust. It doesn't mean that I agree with everything, but they embody ideas which are reasonable, rational. I have listed a few names. These are overwhelmingly libertarian. So people with a status who are acknowledged as public intellectuals, public figures, scholars. I haven't done this formally, but these are the kind of people that I've been reading or that I'm spontaneously interested in. So Jeff Deist, Mr. Deist, I have ordered your book. As I record this, it is supposed to arrive tomorrow, and I will take the time to read your book, Mr. Deist, because I know it's a good book. Yeah. So Jeff Deist, former president of the Mises Institute, who has found a new job, but new opportunities might arise at some moment. So Jeff Deist, Ron Paul, Charles Murray, Thomas Sowell, Jordan Peterson, Stephen Molyneux, Tom Woods, of the Tom Woods TV show, that's a libertarian, Richard Lynn, that's a scientist, Helmut Nyborg, Edward Dutton, the Jolly Heretic, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Per Byland, Thomas Di Lorenzo, Monsieur Philippe Nemo, a French libertarian, Drieu Godfriedi, a Belgian libertarian, Monsieur Charles Gave, a French classical liberal, but in the modern context that would be kind of a libertarian, and Mr. Heiner Rindermann, a German scholar. So these are examples of people. They have a status. They are not all of them very well known, but they have a status as intellectuals, scholars, public figures, and I kind of trust their ideas, and I share their ideas, and I draw a lot of inspiration from their ideas as public figures in a way. These are the kind of reasonable intellectual that I intend to share and promote, that I have already promoted and that I will keep promoting. But just to be honest, when I'm balanced, reasonable, these are the kind of views that I have. Libertarian, right-wing libertarian, right-wing libertarian, but they are reasonable, balanced for the Western world. Because as of now, I think in terms of Western, there are French, Belgian, Swede, German, English, Danish, American, Canadian people. So of most nationalities, Western nationalities, and they embody the idea and the ideal of right-wing libertarianism, conservative libertarianism, one might say. Not all of them, they do not even self-identify as such, but they are all in favor of more liberty while restoring morality in a way, and scientific honesty, integrity, etc., etc. It doesn't mean that I agree with everything that all of them have ever said, but overwhelmingly, I tend to agree with most of their views. And they are, most of them, all of them, they are responsible adults. So I kind of agree with these people, yeah. And finally, here I will just briefly comment this document. yeah. I simplify here, really, I will not spend a lot of time, but what happens in the modern world, in the modern West, but actually it's a matter of concern for the whole world because everything is interconnected. This is objektiver Geist, the categories which structure social interactions. Here we have subjektiver Geist, namely the world soul, evolutionary psychology, the individual soul, consciousness, theoretical Geist, psychology, language, intelligence, and practical Geist, liberty. What I talk about in the series of videos that I'm introducing in this video is home economics. That's kind of the transition between the soul, in the broader sense, which includes the psyche, actually, the biological and psychological aspect of the individuals, the transition between the individual as a soul and the individual as a free agent in a society. Yeah, and I simplify here to the utmost, but what has happened in the Western world is that after the traumatic events of the Second World War, there has been a censorship, a moral, and sometimes legal, but a moral censorship due to a trauma of most topics concerning the biological determination of the soul, which includes sociobiology in its excessive forms. It can lead to what has been called scientific racism, but actually race realism, it's just a realistic view of anthropology, but it led politically to excesses. So as a counter-reaction against the trauma due to the excesses of sometimes the abuse of science, there has been a moral rejection of all the topics, almost, or if not a rejection, a falsification of all the topics of subjective spirit, subjective Geist, namely evolutionary psychology, morphology, a realistic view of anthropology, demographics, IQ, everything which structures humans as a biological creature has been censored morally in the West for the past 70 years, one might say. And the modern categories of the Western world, they revolve overwhelmingly around economics, sociology, and culture. Everything is interpreted through the lens of culture, sociology, and economics without almost any reference to the biological foundation of society, and if there are references, it is considered to be malleable because the dominant ideology is leftist. But because anthropology, in the broader sense, biology is the foundation of society, a society cannot realistically negate completely its own biology and its own sense of awareness of biology. But this is what has happened for moral reasons, which are actually, Kevin MacDonald talks about this in his book, they are determined on an evolutionary ground because people, they want to fit in the group, and if the ideology of the group is, this is what happens to white people in the modern West, we do not talk about biology because of the trauma of past events, because it might lead to tension, conflict, etc. So we erase the conflicting question about intelligence, socio-biological determinism, etc., etc. So people who negate biology in public discourse and refuse to talk about it, or even are not even aware that it might exist and that it might determine their behavior, they are nonetheless determined socio-biologically for the search for group belonging. And the morality of the modern West is egalitarian in a way, and nurture with in the nurture versus nature debate, there is a rejection overwhelmingly of the natural determinism of man, which is actually kind of, it's ludicrous, but it's a response to a collective trauma. But what happens, I explain here very briefly, what happens with the rise of the internet and alternative means of communication is the revival of a scientific view of humans with their biological determinism. So the question of biology is re-entering politics, but only as of now through the means of non-official, that would be educational system, academia, non-official views. And what happens, the movement of mind and spirit in the Western world is becoming aware of the tendencies, the socio-biological tendencies, which are at the foundation of all human societies, predominantly the change in demographics, the natural differences between the genders, which are not cultural, but they are partly cultural, but they are predominantly determined biologically. So there is a revival of the awareness of sex differences, demographics, anthropological differences, and the psychological, socio-psychological or socio-biological determinism of minds, and the question of IQ and the distinction in intelligence between various human groups, and it has and will have consequences onto the whole of society, because it completely shatters the epistemological worldview, I mean the theory concerning science that the West has had for many decades as a moral response to a trauma. So this is what happens. To simplify, the movement of mind and spirit is simply Westerners, and it's not just of concern for the West, but for the whole world, because with the share of knowledge and the spread of information, it affects the change of consciousness in the whole world. But basically, humans are becoming and will become aware of the biological determinations and determinism which structure human society. And here, my responsible self is simply to try to promote an intelligent, rational way of talking. This is exactly what Charles Murray does in a lot of his books, to avoid the excesses which have affected the past, not to make the past mistakes. This is what I promote, because this is what I know and believe and know is true. But simply I explain that the West is awakening itself after, in a chronological perspective, more than 70 years of slumber. But there has to be a balanced reaction, and this is why right-wing libertarians, they find a compromise between universality of ethics potentially can be applied to all, while promoting the modern advances of science, namely to acknowledge the inherent differences between humans, groups of humans and individual humans in terms of potential, intelligence, character, etc., etc. So they are realist about controversial topics in terms of biology and intelligence and behavior, without being excessive. And this is what I will promote, because this is what is true, namely to have a realistic view of humans while promoting a universalist view of ethics. Because the problem here, I simplify, the problem of the left is that they are universalist, but they are not realistic. And the right, I simplify, they are realistic, but they are not universalist. And the truth is the unity of both, but it's a movement, it's a process. Yeah, so that's what I could say. So, my view is deregulate the market, regulate your behavior. And finally, I have a series of books. I talked about my view of the totality. We live in a global village where we are in the process, as I record this, and this has been the case for the past few decades with the advent of the modern means of communication, and it will continue. the totality of world knowledge is made available, so everyone, we live in a global village where everyone can spy on everyone else, and that's why everything eventually will be known in a way, and the people who do not believe in the view of God, all-knowing God, I understand why they might not believe if they are not believers, but even if there were no God, the process of the gathering and the revelation of all information is already occurring. And here I promote books which explain we live in an age where basically everything is being known, everything is being collected and gathered. The death of private life, like in a village, the emergence of the American police state, like in a village where everything knows everything about. Here it's true of America, but actually it's true of every Western country. No place to hide. The NSA, Edward Snowden, the NSA and the US surveillance state, and it's the case not only in the West, but in China as well. We live in a system of mass surveillance, but also of mass production of information, and this totality, where everything is being revealed, that's how things happen. But the people who gather consciously the knowledge for the sake of the state, the knowledge in a way is too fast even for them. And they gather empirical knowledge, but they usually do not have any kind of philosophical view of the structure in its totality. And this is the process which has been going on through the means of the internet. I mean, everything is being made manifest, all ideas are being revealed in a way. Here I've showed the technological aspect, but actually it's a philosophical and religious process, and I try not to, in a way, not to frighten others, because there are some frightening aspects, but everything that we say in the global village, everything that we share publicly, and sometimes even privately, because there are cameras of surveillance everywhere. We live in a de facto village where everything is being recorded, banking transaction, internet search, personal documents, what is being shared publicly. So eventually, at some moment, I don't know, consciously I don't know how many time it will take, many weeks, months, years maybe, I don't know, but everything will be made manifest and will be revealed. And of course, a lot of people, they don't want to reveal their life, and I understand, because it can be sometimes problematic. But what I'm trying to share by showing this book is that eventually everything will be known. So I understand why people have a psychological need for privacy. I do as well, and everyone does. But the piece of advice that I can give to people who watch this, whenever they watch this, whenever you speak publicly, I'm trying to promote a view where people would not live in constant terror or constant fear. But whenever you speak publicly, to try to know that potentially you talk to everyone, which the tendency in the mind of white people is political correctness, self-censorship, etc. It's partly this tendency, but actually through the very medium of the internet, talking to any person, potentially anyone can watch this. So one way is what has been tried unconsciously for many decades in the West, is constant moral censorship, we have to falsify language, we have to negate all the potentially conflicting assertions, not to hurt anyone else, but then it turns into a collective insanity, collective pathology. If people are afraid to speak, I will speak. That's what I said. And what I can say is, in order to find psychological health, one has to be willing to speak the same truth. Of course, it has to be adapted, because here I have an autistic self. Sometimes I disregard completely social status. I know that the truth has to be particularized to each specificity, because there are distinctions of culture, intelligence, age, etc., etc. But eventually, the truth is the same for all. And I have understood that I have to be able and to be willing potentially to speak the same truth to anyone, but while adapting to the particular level of consciousness of each person, because some aspects are too complex, either because of lack of intelligence or lack of education or lack of culture, etc. But eventually, we live in a global village, because the world, there's only one world. I tried with the series of videos, the 4 videos that I have produced and that I will publish, to provide an ethics. It's a process, it's not perfect, it can be improved, etc. But at least the view to enable, to stabilize and to bring order, first in the Western world, but eventually in a global village. And how should I explain this? We all live in the same world. As of now, very few people are aware of this, because they are trapped, which can be also a protection, but they live in their singular or particular bubble in a way. They think that they live in their bubble, and that the others, they are distant geographically, etc. But everything is interconnected. So eventually, we will see, that's already the case, but the emergence of a world consciousness. What I've been trying to do, what I still try to do with this series of videos about economics, is to provide stability for myself, but eventually for all the others who are interested, or at least the tools which enable to find balance and stability, because I need this psychologically, physiologically, to be able to be productive, to be able to dedicate myself fully to a more complex intellectual work, one might say. I try to provide this. It can be improved. It will be improved, if not by me as an individual, by others. But eventually, yeah, we all live in the same global village. There are tension and conflicts in villages sometimes, but yeah, I try to bring my contribution. So yeah. And finally, I will conclude. I don't know when this video will be published, maybe in the coming days. Here we are the 12th of April, maybe next week, I don't know yet. I don't know when, but I will publish, I intend to publish not all the videos about home economics all at once, but step by step. They are already recorded, and I will publish them one after the other. So there will be 5 videos, this introduction and then 4 parts. And when I start publishing this, I will take a few days of being disconnected, probably from because I have a lot of problems myself. Just I do not intend to give up on my views, on my lifestyle in the good sense, and my plans and my projects, but life has been very difficult from a psychological and intellectual standpoint, and it still is, because of the constant pressure, the overflow of information. Once my ideas are shared, and here I really have worked a lot, I've worked more on these kind of views, but I have worked a lot on my home economics videos. Once they are shared, the ideas do not belong to me any longer, they belong to the villagers of the global village. I I will have, here I have to be honest, I will have a sense of having done a part of my duty, providing at least the formal structure. It's still a work in progress, but it's not, it doesn't mean that I will stop working or stop caring, but I will just, because I need this for my psychological balance, grant, that's what I said, keep having a daily routine and grant myself a significant portion of the day just to have a calm, balanced psyche for myself. And I intend to take a few days off of being partly disconnected at some moment, just to be able to calm and slow down a little bit, and then I intend to keep producing content. So I don't know exactly how it will happen, but I need a little bit of calm and tranquility, because I know that there are problems at all levels and they are all interconnected. The reason why, I conclude by saying the reason why I have been producing this video on home economics is because I live in a state of constant pressure, because I see the problems, the tension, the instability everywhere. What I can do, what I want to do, is work on myself to improve myself on a singular level, share my ideas with others. They might find inspiration and good ideas, and I cannot implement the ideas for you other than myself. I can implement them for myself when I know they are good, but I cannot do the work for you. What I can say as of now is I will assert my right to freedom, my liberty. This is what I want, to be able to speak on my own terms. This is my will. This is what I will do. The others have to adapt. I am willing to make compromises on many things because I am not completely mature, responsible. So I'm willing to promote reasonable views, because this is what I believe in, but my fundamental core principles, I will not compromise on these principles, because this is what I want and what I need and what I've been working for, in a way. And yeah, so that's what I can say. And here I will conclude with a remark by H.L. Mencken, the American, maybe he was an anarchist, a kind of weirdo, but a very intelligent weirdo. Somewhere he says about Puritanism, I partly identify with Puritan. I have puritanical aspects. The fear, for real, the definition of Puritanism is the fear that someone, somewhere, might be happy. The Puritans, they are afraid that maybe they might be happy, or some people might be happy. That's kind of a cause of concern. So let us make things as rigorous and boring and sinister, not in a excessive way, but a kind of a moral rigor. And I have this tendency because of my personal history. But here, I thought about this before recording the video. I tend to suffer psychologically from inhibition. I feel guilty when I appreciate life. I feel guilty. And in this sense, I really identify with the classical Anglo-Saxon at large and the classical Americans, not like Ron Paul, but even before, really the 19th century, some of the excesses of the puritanical communities. Whenever I feel good about myself, I feel kind of guilty, because that's why I'm sort of I promote individualism for myself, but I'm also some sort of a intellectual collectivist, because I share my ideas for free with others. But I have a masochistic tendencies, and because I feeling good makes me feel bad, because I feel guilt and inhibition. And in a way it's partly good, because sometimes you have to repress and restrain your tendency, because life is not just about enjoyment, there are more difficult aspects, but I have sometimes the reverse tendency, and my life has been a constant struggle for many years, and it still is the case, but I will not give up my struggle for a search for happiness, but simply, once I know that I have been doing my duty, and I will still continue to do so, but I will grant myself nonetheless moments of relief where I can just appreciate simple things, like sometimes taking a few hours off for going, walking outside, reading good books for my own interest, what I haven't been able to do, because when I read good books, of course I find enjoyment, but I always use this with the purpose of gathering knowledge for being able to improve my view and my content. So here I'm honest, once my videos are about home economics are being published, of course I will continue to work because I have still many projects and I need to work to feel good about myself in a way, but I will partly live for myself, not in a egotistical selfish way, because I really believe in what I promote in the video, namely libertarianism, ecology, minimalism. I really do believe in this, but sometimes just being happy for me is simply, here I say it, sometimes I might have the temptation just to go walk in the forest without caring, once the videos are without caring about the news or about all the complexities, sometimes just to unplug my overdrive brain activity. I will grant myself the right to read good books, to search for stability in my personal life, to study the sky, to walk outside and to continue my daily routine, but I will nonetheless, because that's my motivation and my drive and I really want to do this as well, I will continue producing content as long as I can, but I will work for my independence and for my psychological balance. Yeah. So yeah, because being constantly connected to the totality of the flow of information, it can really drive you insane. That's the mental health problems which are caused to a lot of people. So my series of videos, I think they can be improved a lot. There are jokes sometimes well, a little bit not very puritanical, one might say. But once my videos about home economics and the documents are being shared, I will be more at peace with myself. Namely, I will continue to work because this is really what I do most of the day. But I will strive for my own happiness as long as I live as a singular individual, which means really have a simple life, but strive for autonomy, independence, and sometimes reading good books. With no ulterior intent of just for myself and enjoying the weather, the sun, the rays of the sun, and walking in the forest. Yeah, so I will continue to work very hard, but simply the constant torment and guilt, trying to live for others constantly, it can be good. It can be partly good if it's moderate, but I have the tendency to be excessive. Being selfish, that's another excess. Yeah, I try to find a balance to help others because I cannot feel good about myself if I see others who suffer or that I cannot help or that I fail to help, etc. I suffer, so I try to help others. Maybe the means are not correct, but at least that's my intention, and I have left enough room as of now for others to adapt and adopt whatever they think is worthy. But I need also psychological individual balance, so I will keep following the news, of course, but with a little bit more detachment, while continuing to work very hard, but simply I cannot be completely present all the time. I did this for a lot of time during 2022, and it has driven me insane to be constantly on alert. Like I said, my view, formulated simply, we live within God. So God is everywhere in a way. Wherever you go, there is God in one aspect, because wherever you go, there is being. I will try to implement order wherever I go, because this is what I need, and psychologically what I want, and how I am wired in a way to try to bring order and clarity. That's how I am. I'm not saying that I always succeed, but that's what I try to do. And I will communicate publicly as long as I can in English. I will communicate publicly in French. I will communicate privately, maybe in German. Publicly, my German, it's a little bit embarrassing. I have embarrassing aspect. Speaking publicly in German, mein Deutsch ist nicht sehr gut. Ja. Vielleicht werde ich mit deutschen Leuten sprechen, aber nicht on the Internet, at least nicht jetzt. Ja, ich muss verbessern, ich muss mein Deutsch verbessern. Yeah, I have to improve my German. It's a little bit rusty and a little bit. Yeah, so that's an example. I enjoy the German language. I love Germany. I haven't had the time or the opportunity to just read good books peacefully. I will grant myself this right to study a little bit of German each day. And I encourage others to first to quit their bullshit job, but here a life lesson that I have learned is balance. Here I have a tendency to be a little bit excessive. And my way of communicating, my PR, my marketing, my communication skills, I have found this recently is, I'm not excessive, I'm passionate. This is not an excess, this is passion. Yeah, that's my way of communicating. That's a joke. Yeah, but I have a tendency to be a little bit excessive sometimes for the good. Yeah. And I know that I have to restrict my excesses by being more balanced. This is a psychological trait that I have suffered from my entire life. So I know that balance is good. This is what Aristotle said already. And every person ought to have the opportunity, a couple of hours a day, or depending on the circumstances, a few moments each day, just for himself. That's what a free society enables. There has to be, here I will make an intelligent remark. In order for a society to be free, there has to be order, of course, but a truly free society is a republican society. I'm not talking about the Republicans of the US, but actually that was the ideal of the founding fathers. A truly free society has to be republican, namely respect for individual liberty, but with requirements on the part of the individuals for the good of the community, but not statist legislative demands, but moral requirements. So order, discipline, individual discipline, collective order, and liberty, they are not opposed, but they are complementary, and they require and presuppose one another. Yeah, so I will continue to work on my self-discipline, trying to bring order and struggling and fighting for liberty. That's what I will do for the rest of my life, I might say. Trying to improve, to grow up, to mature. I have a lot of problems personally. There are a lot of problems on a global scale. This series of video is really, I think, a good contribution. I will share the videos, I don't know when, but I will share the videos. And yeah, that's what I had to say. Yeah. So here, for instance, I will stop the video. I will go outside a little bit. I will rewatch the video tonight or tomorrow. Put the order, the structure. I don't know when it will be published. I don't know when you, the viewer, will watch this. Maybe it will have taken many days, many weeks, many months. I don't know. Yeah, but I have been working on a series of videos about home economics. They can be really helpful because they have helped me a lot. And yeah, and I will keep recording content. I have still many projects, many ideas to share. But here really that is the introduction to home economics, a way of rebuilding the foundation of society for stability, order and liberty. Yeah.